This episode is powered by Mod 42. Their modular approach represents the future of data center infrastructure. By combining innovation, design with cutting-edge technology, they deliver scalable, efficient, and sustainable solutions that transforms how businesses deploy and manage their computing resources. Welcome to Beyond the Megawatt. I'm Valerie Crafton, Risk and Site Strategist. I'm joined by my co-host, Mara Irvin, reuse expert and real estate visionary. Together, we are the Data Center Darlings. We're spotlighting the voices and ideas powering digital infrastructure's future. Let's dive in and go beyond the megawatt.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode. Today, we're super excited about our guest, VIP guest. We also refer to her as the GOAT, Carrie Goetz. She has been an amazing mentor for me personally over my career, and she's impacted the lives of a lot of women and men around me. And we're just really super excited. Valerie, my co-host, is with us today. And why don't we just kind of get started? Carrie, introduce yourself however you want today, and we'll get things kicked off.
My name's Carrie Goetz. I've been in this industry for a stupid number of years, as people will know. And there's probably some people that have thought my years were stupid, but hey, we all are till we learn, and we're kind of in it together. But yeah, I have literally been in every shape, form, or fashion of this industry. I've been a consultant most of my career. I've run large data centers. I've commissioned data centers. I've actually decommissioned some of the ones I've commissioned in, since I'm such an old hag. And I'm currently doing a lot of technical writing. I still do CTO as a service for a very select few customers, but I've kind of been on a few-year journey of paying it forward and helping other people be more successful as they start in the industry. So that's kind of where I am.
Yeah, we're so super excited to have you here. I know when you and I were talking one time, you were talking about how when you first entered into the industry and you would go to a conference, you were the one of maybe two in the room. So talk about how you actually ended up in the industry. What is that story? Maybe not everybody knows that story.
I kind of got sucked in, actually. My first degree was in architecture, and then AutoCAD came about, and kind of a little bit before that, I started teaching computer-aided engineering, civil, structural, architectural, mechanical, and electrical in junior college, and AutoCAD came about. And they wanted somebody that was not afraid of computers, and I wasn't, because I programmed in some other languages to kind of take that on. And then I ended up writing some code for AutoCAD and doing that. And in the course of time, as things migrated, I ended up working for a coding company, and then they were going to start a networking practice. And back then it was in the old frame relay days, and things still moved around on floppy disks. And we literally had SneakerNet, where you put it on a disk and sneakered it over to another computer. And so networking first came about, and I was one of the very first people to kind of jump on that bandwagon. To your point, the story you're talking about, I taught a class at Interop. There was about 1,500 people in there because networking was brand new. Everybody wanted to know about it. Back then, Interop was a massively large conference, kind of like the Computer Electronic Showcase is now. And there's about 1,500 people in that presentation, 3 women, me, one woman that actually cared what I was talking about, and the lady that was scanning badges at the door. And so we've definitely come a long way in this industry. And I think that's something that's really lost on a lot of the new women that are coming out. Like, I hear all of these comments from young women about how horrible this industry is and the patriarchy or whatever. This industry has come a very long way. And there's a lot of us women that have busted our ass to make it a better industry for everybody that comes behind us, whether that's reaching out at a trade show, starting a group of women, starting a conference call for women that are just trying to figure out where they are in the industry, taking the time with somebody new and saying, hey, look, if you guys want to do a newbie walk at this trade show, let's do that. We'll get 20 of you together. We'll go around. We'll talk about how each one of these things affect your job. And if it's something new, we'll all learn together. What a disarming thing to do. And I think little simple things like that really have kind of changed the way for women in the industry. And it just pains me that there's been so many women that have worked so hard, and so many men even that have worked so hard to make this a better place, to just kind of crap on that body of work, for lack of a better term, and not really accept the fact of where we've come. We are so much better than where we were. And if you really want to talk about leveling the scales and evening the playing fields, why are we not talking to young girls about tech? We still don't have tech in most of our schools. We have coding and cybersecurity, two very small pieces. I think we can do more. So I hope that answers your question. I rambled.
But no, I'm glad you brought this up, because Valerie and I have talked about that too. We still have moments, right? We have moments where we're like, wow, are we still there, where we're still having these same conversations or experiences? But again, these are just little moments in time that affect certain people. And Carrie, I love that you're really we need to take a step back and look at the holistic, how the landscape has changed. And the other thing that I'll say, I think you were a big part of this, Carrie. When I came into the industry around 99, the women were still very far and few between. And then the women I would just say they weren't as willing to help. They checked me a lot more. That made sense. They weren't really mentoring me, but they were just always checking me, which I learned from those things. But I would say in the last 10 years, especially, and I think, Carrie, you've been a big part of this, is you're like, why should we make all the women who are entering the industry have such a tough time as like that we had? Why don't we make it easier and help them, and actually not look at each other as competitors, but look at each other as allies, and help our female counterparts too kind of get through that path a little quicker, and that understanding a little quicker than it took us, I guess.
I agree with that. I think what I hear more than anything is that women will say that women are the worst. And I think this is a really great segue into talking about in regards to what you said, Carrie. You've all worked your ass off to get to this point, right? And here we are. I was brought in, and the way I was able to even meet you is I was connected with you, I think, through Nancy Novak, and you had started initially a LinkedIn group that had grown from there. They had maxed out.
We blew it up.
We did. We were like, we have a problem. We can't add any more people. And we were like, how do we fix this?
Yeah. So tell us about that LinkedIn group, why it was started, and then how it transpired into something bigger.
So I kind of started a long time ago, just people new in the industry. If you have questions, a place to reach out, a place to call. I may not know the answers, but I probably know somebody that does, and kind of help connect those dots. And then other women started bringing other women. Fast forward a couple of years later, and Rona hit. And so everybody was sitting in their offices with COVID. And there was a lot of conversations that happened organically through networking that didn't get to happen. And we were considered an essential industry. So we kept working, but a lot of us didn't have that. So we very methodically reached out to a lot of women and sort of set up this group. And we've broken it a few times. We have Medic Monday still going on. That one's broken. We're about to start a new round of invites for that one. But the whole point is there's always places you can go for help. And I hear the comments where women say women are the worst. That is a person problem. That is not an industry problem. There are crappy people everywhere, in every shape, form, walk of life. Anywhere you go on the planet, prejudice exists, mean people exist. Exercise those from your life and focus on the ones that are doing the positive. And I tell you, and it's harmful. It's really, really harmful to have that attitude. And I'll tell you why. I'm working on another book that is Voices for Women in Technology. And I put out some questions over there. And the thing that scared me the most was the number of young women that came back with the exact same answer of supposed wrongs that they had seen because they heard that in a presentation. And it was almost verbatim the same exact language. So if you teach people to be victims, they're going to be victims. If you teach them, this is what you need to watch for, this is how society is going to screw you, this is how your life is going to get worse, that's what people focus on. Instead of doing the opposite and saying, okay, well, that person might not have been the right person to have in your life right now. Let's flip that around and get you with somebody more positive and get you in a more positive situation. I think the problem that we have in this industry and elsewhere too is that women are grouped in a whole thing. We're all different. Every one of us. We all have blonde hair. That's a similarity, right? But that doesn't define us, right? There's so many things that are different. And I think we really have to get to a point where we separate people problems or person problems from industry problems. Was that person a jerk? Maybe so. But here's the thing. You need to use those times to reflect on yourself. Mirror economics is the best thing you can do in life, right? There's two sides to every story, three sides, some people say. We all have a part in any situation we're in. It could be a horrible situation, but what do you take from that? How do you improve from that? And what do you do to make sure, A, get in that situation again? B, what was your culpability? How much do that mirror economics? How did I react? Could I have reacted better? Could I have maybe not fanned the fuel of that fire? Not saying that it's your fault. There's no situation on earth that you can't take some positive learning experience from. And I think instead of going down the victim trail, we need to go down the success trail. Yes, this happened to me. It was bad. This is how I emerged a phoenix. This is how I came out on top. This is what I learned from it. And I think that's really the next evolution in all these conversations about women in tech is we've got to get past the victimhood and we have to get to the healing and the forward movement. And that's really, I think, where we're going to excel. They'll tell you women get stuff done.
My takeaway from that whole thing is stop saying women are the worst. People can be the worst because, and I'm learning this right now, like through this conversation, I'm learning this right now. Because to your point, man or woman could do these very same things and have done these very same things. And I think sometimes we have higher expectations for our female counterparts because we're like similar. So we would expect more from them, but we're all humans, we're all learning. And these are individual interactions and we have to stop generalizing. Yeah, I've seen that show up in other places too, in other conversations.
So I have a perspective on this, just because I've had the most amazing year this year. Coming out of a graduating class from college where I was one of two graduating women in my graduating group, and going into a construction industry where, frankly, they're not moving and they haven't moved as fast as maybe some of the other markets as far as how many women or how inviting it is for women. We've come a long way. But what I realized is when I was in my environment and I stayed in that little environment, my environment was very small. My environment was the corporate office I was with, or the contractor I worked for, and there were only a few of us. And so my perspective was based on a select few. Now that I've gone out and I started within the last several years, I really started seeing, as I connected with Carrie's group, I started getting connected with more women. Suddenly I didn't feel so alone. Suddenly I didn't feel like I was the only one. And all of a sudden I was connected with people across the region, across the world. It was phenomenal. And that really started to change my perspective on everything, for that matter. And then within the last year, being able to get into a leadership role and help support other women and help drive the voices in the industry and through this podcast and really connect with so many people, I've developed a tribe now. And I really feel like I am surrounded by way more incredibly amazing women who are nothing but hype women, not women who want to tear you down, that outweigh 100% the women I have met along my career path in the last 20 plus years. I have 100% in this last year have created this little tribe that I didn't even know existed, but I had to step outside my comfort zone. I had to put myself in a different environment. I had to intentionally really connect with people beyond just my little space. And it just flip-flopped everything.
Acknowledging
all of those moments feel like one in a million.
Acknowledging our unconscious bias, right? We have our own stories we create. I want to pivot a little bit, Carrie, because this is a great segue into how you have, when you are on a stage or listening and a consulting in your consulting practice, a fractional CTO, people don't say, oh, that's a woman. That's not the first thing that we see. We see a subject matter expert, and you've done that extremely well. So maybe kind of walk us through, maybe it just organically happened, but if you have any insight into how you've shown up over the years.
You just got to be a sponge. Honestly, that's my thing. I was blessed to have done projects all over the globe. And that brings you such a very different perspective. Being outside the US is very different than being inside the US. And I've been in places that are dicey by what you consider safe standards. But everybody has their own way of life. And what you learn when you do that is that people's experiences are very, very different. And people come at situations and problems differently, right? So there's codes and standards that are different, but there's also way of life and the way people approach things. A lot of it has to do with how we consume news. A lot of it has to do with how we consume information. But for me, the biggest thing was that was such a huge learning opportunity. Codes and standards are different. People are different. Design methodologies are different. Climate is different. There's so many things that make that puzzle extremely difficult to navigate, but also super exciting to navigate. So for me, I personally am not going to get up there on stage and go talk about something that I don't feel comfortable about. That's why people say I'm a great public speaker, because I don't go up there and talk about things I'm uncomfortable with or read slide presentations. But that just comes from really being a good student. It's not that I'm that great. It's that I really, really enjoy technology, and I really love to learn new things. And I love to see how the foot bone connects to the leg bone and what happens if it's a different leg bone and those kind of things. That to me is really kind of the growth. And when I started in networking, that just kind of morphed into everything. We didn't have data centers back then. We had computer rooms, but we didn't have actual data centers. And I can remember there was a huge debate in the industry about what is a data center, because you can't call your computer room a data center. It's not good enough. So
they weren't redundant back then either. So
exactly. Right. So, but also if you think about that right now, we've kind of gone the opposite. We went from having systems where people learned to tolerate if something was down for a little bit to now we waste 65% of our power trying to make sure that nothing goes down. So there's got to be a happy medium in there somewhere. We have to get back to the point. Look at Ohio. They just passed a bill. You have to use 85% of your power or you don't get a building permit. That's going to change. And I think other states are going to do the same, because rolling blackouts are not going to be acceptable. So it's going to be an interesting year for sure.
I will say that some of my most interesting talks that I've heard from you is you will take, hey, this is what we're doing really, really well, but hey, we forgot about this little thing over here, like stranded power. I sat through one of your presentations and I was like, why is nobody else talking about this?
Because it's a dirty little secret. It's the quiet part I said out loud, because I will do that.
Yeah. Well, and I love that, because you also touched on tech transfer as well, and how complicated that is, and how that's really impacting the supply chain of being able to bring those the things that are manufactured abroad and bringing them and trying to fit them in here, and not thinking through all of the differences in codes and so forth, and all the adjustments and so forth that have to be done once it lands here. So these are just things like, there's so much connectivity, and to your point, if you don't know, be a learner, go ask questions, go do research. That's called a growth mindset. I love it.
We are all ignorant until we know.
And not everybody
ubiquitously claim across the board, regardless of who you are, we are all ignorant till we know.
And you just said something too that made me think about this. You have had the opportunity to travel and work in different geographies and regions across the world. Not everybody has that luxury, but there's a lot of work streams and work groups like OCP and other things where you can start listening into how other people are solving problems. Because if you stick with one company for 20 years, you only know the solutions that your company needed, or your business unit or your team, and collaborating and listening into how others are solving problems actually helps you see, to Carrie, to your point, not everybody's solutions are the same. Some people are solving for power differently in Texas than they are in Ohio, and different in the US than they are in Asia. Like we have to really listen into how everybody's.
You want to talk about diversity, that's diversity. Right? It has nothing to do with how you look. It's diversity of thought, how two people come at a subject. If you take somebody that's really good with their hands, and we all know that person that can take apart anything, put it back together, do a great job. My husband's one of those people. That's his superpower. If you took him and put him with an engineer, because he does it all the time, they get better outcomes, because you get the practical experience with the book intention, right? And figure out, because you're coming at it from two different ways. And that to me, if I'm hiring people, the person that went out on their own and did MOOCs and got a college degree free, but self-studied the whole 4-year curriculum, dude, give me that person all day, every day. That is a drive that is insane. Same knowledge, minus the physical piece of paper and the $200,000 worth of debt, but definitely a drive to learn, right? And I think we have to really start embracing those different ways of learning. Look at the trades. None of us function without the skilled trades. None of us. Our industry does not exist, period. And we need to stop treating them as anything less than brilliant. It's just, and I'll tell you, my generation started it. If you don't go to college, you're not anything. And the bad part about the mind trick of that part is that people assume their degree is more important than they are themselves. It's on every job application. It's enforced through HR. I saw one not long ago. I posted on LinkedIn. It was about a year ago. Said that they wanted you to have a master's degree, starting pay $15 an hour. Nobody's going to do that. And how many of our jobs, let's be honest, how many of our jobs really, really require a degree? And the answer is, outside of professional engineers and architects, none of them. Every bit of that can be taught in a different way. It doesn't matter how you learn, it matters that you learn. And I think right now with AI, we are in a very, very different place. All these apprenticeships that we're working on, one of them very heavily lays on AI for people, for instance, that move to the US from a different country and don't understand imperial math, right? Very basic skill. Doesn't mean they have no skills and can't work. It means they need help doing some conversions. But other than that, we should absolutely embrace their skills.
This episode is brought to you by BCS Switchgear, where power meets precision. From obsolete breakers to the new 15 to 34.5 kV switchgear and low break switches, BCS delivers fast answers and custom engineered solutions that keep mission critical systems online.
We also need to do a better job of showing the succession plan of a skilled trade, because I think students who are looking at going to college and getting their undergrad or their master's degree or PhD, they're starting to look at the numbers, right? Like, I could make this much money with my degree starting out, but a lot of them can't get jobs, right? But if what we need to do a better job of saying, hey, with an associate's degree, a certificate, you might start out here at a lower pay, but the succession plan is astronomical, and you're not facing all that pressure of your debt and financial burdens, and your quality of life is just a little different starting out. That's how I started. And then you just kind of just work your way up.
If you want a degree by then, you're a little bit older and you figured out what you want. Like, that was kind of the whole point of the Jumpstart book is, look, here's the whole kind of industry and how it fits together. Read it in a weekend. Figure out kind of which piece or part ignites your imagination and go from there. But there's not really, when I wrote this book, there was one other book that was 800 pages. Nobody's going to read that, decide if they want to join an industry. Great for a textbook, but not for here's what the industry does. And something else we talk about, things that we should be teaching. We should be teaching responsible computing. How come we're not teaching that? How come we don't teach students how much power it takes to send a snap? Because Snap wants the information off that picture. That's why. So think about that. Think about all these free tools that we have from all the tech companies. And I'm not trying to disparage any of them. But why, if we have such a sustainability problem, are we not teaching students how to be responsible with their computing?
Dr. Sharon did touch on that on one of the episodes.
And I think we talked about digital waste as well, and how we need to be smart about cleaning up our own data, because it's being stored somewhere, right? And that's all pulling energy. And so if you got duplicates of photos or anything, any way that you can sort of clean that clutter up, that will really help our overall waste in the digital world.
For sure.
Yeah, when you all were talking, I started thinking about this intern that had come and worked under me in college, and he didn't want to take any coaching or advice on doing takeoffs. And he's like, oh, I got an A in this class. And I came back to check on him, and he had drawn these huge boxes over this parking lot. And he's like, one big box over. And I said, so there's a lot of trades that touch that entire area. And the thing that you just took off, which was just asphalt, right, is not covering all of those areas. That's a lot of plant area. There's some curbs in there. I said, so you actually have to go through and click in every single, let me show you a quick way. And he just really didn't want to take that information. And I started thinking about that example, immediately popped in my head, just because he just refused to take the coaching because he thought he got an A in the class and he was already an expert. And it was one of the things I kind of, instead of just pointing it out to him, I brought the interns together and I just said, hey, you all are learning the ABCs of construction. And until you get into the job and you learn and you make mistakes and then you learn some more, you're going to have to take some coaching from those who are willing to actually pass that down and teach you the tricks on how to work smarter, not harder. And so just because you got into an A in the class or you did really well, that's great. That means you understand how to turn on the computer and make a box. But that doesn't mean that you understand where that box should stop and start and all of the trades that are touching each of those corners. And so it started making me think about just the hands-on training that a trade has where they're learning as they're going and they immediately can connect that dot. I would have never had to tell a trade person that at all.
I'd love to hear Carrie talk about failure.
Oh, I've failed a lot. I'm an expert at failure. That's one thing I have not failed at is failure.
I think we have to show up. We have to, if we show up teaching, hey, we actually push ourselves to fail. But maybe Carrie, talk through that. How has failure really helped you in your career? And you said being a sponge. So that, I think that plays into that, going into a room and not having to be the smartest one in there, but listening, but kind of walk through those points of failure and just taking in knowledge from other people.
I think if it's constructive criticism, it's very easy, right? I think everybody can take, maybe not at that exact moment. Maybe you need to get over yourself for a minute, but I think we can all take constructive criticism. And you have to figure out, I think you also have to sort of set boundaries of what you accept, right? But we all fail. Sometimes you get a divorce, sometimes you get another job. But what you have to realize when you look at that failure and just look in that mirror and say, okay, let's dissect the situation. And nobody can do that except you, right? You can't do that with a chat AI bot or whatever. You have to really mirror economics. I stole that from Terry Bradshaw, but I love that expression. You really have to look and figure out what your reaction to that is. We're all going to get fired. And when you get fired, you think that's, especially if you're a single mom, you think that is the end of the planet, right? But normally you fail up. You end up in a better place. You've learned something from the past. You learn what you will and will not tolerate. You learn sometimes that it's best to let things go and let karma just do its thing. Sometimes it takes a while, but if you get to witness karma, it is a delight. It is an absolute delight. It is one of the
I'm experiencing some karma as we speak. I try not to be too excited though, because
karma's good. But honestly, I mean, there's nothing and we're our own worst failure, right? Who's going to tell you you failed? Nobody's going to tell you failed. They'll tell you you're not right for a situation. You're not right for a circumstance. You're not right for a job. Your decision was not right in that moment, but nobody can tell you you failed but you. And you have to get over yourself. The best things in life happen when we get over ourselves. Give yourself grace. You're not going to be perfect. You're not, even if you try and do the best, sometimes things come out wrong. I say stuff wrong all the time. I'm really good at that too. But you have to take what you can from that situation, give yourself grace and move on, because you're never going to move forward looking in the rear view mirror. And if you live in that moment and you live in that failure, you screw yourself. Mm-hmm. You're the only one that hurts is yourself, because you can't get over it then, right? You are so mired in how I did this wrong. The best thing to do, think about imposter syndrome. We hear all this talk about how horrible imposter syndrome is. It's amazingly healthy. You should be scared. You're doing something new, for Pete's sake. You should be terrified. But then you should very consciously say, what am I terrified of? Mm-hmm. And then you can solve that methodically. You're not going to do it overnight, but this scares me because maybe I don't know something. Go read an article. This scares me because I don't know how this boss is going to be. Have lunch with them. This scares me because, right? So then you turn it into tangible steps where now it becomes something positive instead of something negative. And I think really in this sort of age of victimhood, and there's celebrity through victimhood now, everybody is all pumped up that they're a victim of something. That is the most unhealthy thing we're doing as a society. We have to do the opposite of that. This is how I got through that. This is what it did for me. And it doesn't have to be loud and vocal. It needs to be personal. And keep a journal of those things. Every woman that's starting out in the industry right now, get a journal. Everything that goes really great, you do a super cool thing on a project, you do something that makes you feel good, write it in that journal. And this is what that's going to do. when you have a really bum day, you're going to have, you can go read that journal, figure out those times where you felt really good about yourself. What about those moments really energized you? Now you have a plan moving forward. The other thing it does is when you're going for a raise, you're going for a promotion, you're going for another job, you're not going to remember that on the fly. Job interview, name a time when. But if you go through that list, then you can name a time. And not only that, but you boost yourself up. You give yourself that self boost of confidence. These are things that I did really, really great. And these are things I can build on moving forward. Sometimes you'll be in a job where it's just not a great fit, and you know it's not a great fit. We've all been there. They could go back to that book. What were these things that just tickled me, right? And then that kind of carves a path. Maybe you found something back then that was super interesting. You incorporated it into one of your projects or one of your meetings or one of your presentations. Maybe that's your new passion line. You're not going to find that if you don't keep it. You can't fix what you don't measure. And we should be measuring ourselves just like we measure anything else in a positive way.
I love that. And I think that helps us if we document who helped us along the way and how that helped us, because that's the whole part of reaching back. Because I think we get through our careers and we're like, oh, okay, I'm arriving, I'm getting here. But we have to reach back and help other people. And I've had to remember those little tiny moments where you did something for me, Carrie, and I want to reach back and do that for somebody else. But just kind of taking note of those little things that maybe seem insignificant at the time, but just making note of those little things, I think later on we'll realize the impact that those things really made.
I really love
the size of your impact on another. Let somebody, the little things, honestly, sometimes the littlest thing on somebody else's worst day can be the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a phone call, a text when you lose your job or people, I think we're hesitant sometimes to reach out to folks because we don't always know what to say. We don't know how to help them, but just saying, hey, I'm here. And I've seen competitors do that. I've seen just reaching out and being an ally to others that are kind of going through things at the same time.
I love what you were touching on. So you've touched on the three things. One, I wanted to just say that the journaling works. I'm an A personality perfectionist kind of mindset. So I'm pretty hard on myself, and my bars that I set for myself are probably unreachable even for me. So always trying to be aware that not to put those same bars on other people. But simultaneously, that's something I definitely did, was that journaling thing that you recommend. So if anybody's listening, it really does work because no one else is tracking your successes or your failures for that matter. And I called them cha-ching moments. So I would track all my cha-ching moments and I would track them down. How did I save money? What initiative did I support? What department did I help? Who did I help? And I'd write all of those down. And then if I made a mistake or fell on my face or I failed in any way, what was that failure and what did I learn from it? And what did I implement to ensure that it never happened again? So when it came time for review, usually the only thing anybody remembers is the thing that you got wrong that year. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to let you remember the one thing because I also did 10 really great things this year as well. And so making sure that we're really looking at both of those, not only just like when I'm having a bad day, I went back and I looked at, okay, I got all of these things right. And I messed up on this one thing. How did I learn? And I just kind of had to just sort of coach myself through those things. So I just constantly not so hard on me and give myself a little bit of grace. You also touched on kind of what's scaring you. And I always think of it in a risk perspective. What's the worst thing that could possibly happen? Think of that worst thing. And what would you do in that situation? And if you can think of a good mitigation and go for it, right? Like, what's the worst possible thing that could happen? I know that when I think about like public speaking, it scares the living daylights out of me. And people were like, no way, I would never guess that you're freaked out or scared or anything. I'm like 100% all the time, but that's why I do it. Because if it scares me, then I want to do it a lot. I want to do it as often as possible, put myself in that situation until it's no longer scary. And so I really love that. And then I think about some of the other things you were saying in regards to if you don't like your situation. I always live by the slogan, if you don't like the situation or what's happening, then what are you doing about it? What are you going to do about it? Are you going to sit there and sulk and be a victim, or are you going to do something about it? So those are my little personal things that I 100% want to just put out there, that I believe in all of that 100%. So I really want to segue into sort of where you are today, Carrie, and
talk about your books, because you have a lot of resources out there for folks. Like what resources do you have? Where walk us through what you've put together for the community?
So the first book, The Jumpstart Your Career in Data Centers, that was designed just to be read in a weekend, give everybody an overview. At the time I wrote that book, the attrition rate for women in tech was 67%, which I think is a deplorable number. Not just that leave a job, that left the entire industry. So clearly that's not good. And I think a lot of that was just not knowing the depth and breadth of the industry and not knowing where else they could take those applicable skills. So I wanted something that would sort of level the playing field, be very easy, jargon free, kind of talk about the problems enough so that I used to go, because I've always been on the propeller head side, but you go on a sales call with a salesperson or something, a lot of cases, the conversation drifts to something away from that product or that solution, and then they get lost. And that's a cruel way for anybody, I think, to function. So that started that one. Then I started trying to get that in schools. And if you're not on the curriculum, it's almost impossible. And a lot of the educators don't understand it well enough to incorporate it in their classrooms. So I started talking to teachers in the electrical trades and construction trades, plumbing, HVAC, all of those. And I'm like, well, we would love to have a way to show students where they can go and use these skills, but we don't know anything about data centers. Matter of fact, I was talking to one guy that teaches electrical, and he said, our students are terrified of the whole industry because you guys have terms that we don't understand. And I said, like what? They said ATS. Okay, well, that's a transfer switch. That's nothing to us. It's literally goes over to another leg of power. But we shouldn't do that, right? We shouldn't make it that it's that difficult that we have this veil of secrecy. So I wrote the educator's reference. It's full of all kinds of experiments you can do in the classroom, key takeaways, so that if a teacher reads the Jumpstart, they know some takeaways, kind of the key points to bring to the class. And then Selena Berglund, who you guys know, wanted to go and talk to her son's class about data centers. And she was told that she could not because it was not on the curriculum, but that she could read a book about farts. And so I thought, well, that's really horrible. So that's where Polly Packet came from, because now we have a kid's book on data centers, not about farts, but it's a kid's book. So it doesn't have to be on the curriculum. Now it's just a reading assignment. And so that's how those came about. Then a couple of colleges picked up the Jumpstart book for their classes. So it's now being updated every 2 years, which is a requirement for college. There's a junior college down there. We also have a huge consortium of people that are working on apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships for the industry. So right now we're working on adding liquid cooling to HVAC technicians. We're working on adding a data center generalist to a lot of the other trades programs. We're working on setting up, there is a data center technician through the Department of Labor already. That's the one they teach at Nova, Cleveland College, I think Mission College does. There's a few of them. Down in Arizona, there's another one. But there's several of us kind of working on those same things. We're trying to make these nationwide apprenticeships through the Department of Labor so that then they can be used kind of anywhere and reach more kids in inner cities and more kids that look at Chicago. They've got data centers all over Chicago. It should be in every single school. Do you know how many schools in Chicago teach anything about data centers? Goose egg. So there's a few that have done some add-ons for capstones and that kind of thing, but that's really what we're working on. And we're working on, if you have a data center book, by the way, let me know, because we're working on doing a Guinness Book of World Records for International Data Center Day, for the most books with data center in the title being donated to elementary schools, junior high schools, and high schools. So if your book falls in that, please let us know so we can put you on the eligibility list. And then beyond that, in the reference section of the book and the reference section of my website, there's additional resources for scholarships, trade associations, places that you can get money to further your career, places you can get more information, connect with other people, network, and all that kind of stuff. And there you go in a nutshell.
And if they wanted to buy the book, where would they find these books?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, either one, Audible. They're in all those places. I am redoing the Audible right now for the new edition. It's not up yet. The old one is still out there, and I also Zoom into classrooms all the time and talk to students. So if anybody out there knows an educator and you want somebody to chat with a class about data centers, holler. Happy to do it.
I love this. I love this. Well, this has just been a beautiful, amazing conversation. What's a question right now that we're not questioning right now? You're all about the audacious, calling out the audacious thing in the industry that no one's talking about. We need to, Carrie. What do you see that we're not talking about? We need to talk about more.
I would say the thing that's going to be super scary this coming year, now that you can expense construction for data centers, there is going to be some crazy scrambling for information, different types of technologies, because supply chain is going to be absolutely insane, especially with a lot of this AI growth. And one of the articles I read that said only about 20% of that growth capacity is attributable to AI. The other 80% is stuff that we would see anyway. And then on top of that, with this new bill that allows this construction to be expensed between now and 2030, they're expecting over the next 2 years that we will have a 20 to 30% increase on construction over our already predicted ridiculously crazy growth numbers.
Oh my gosh, that is really audacious.
So find your allies, find your tribe, find your network. And I'm telling you, figure out the people. If you're in sales, if you're a subject matter expert, wherever you are, find the people that are in that same niche. If you're working with facilities, find the other people that are talking to facilities managers. Figure out how your stuff interoperates. Talk about where these projects are. It's going to be such a rapid fire 2 years. I'm telling you, we saw this when the dot-coms went crazy before the dot-coms went .dead. But I don't think this one's going to go .dead. I think this is going to change everything. I think education is going to be exponentially different in 5 years. I think that the university model is going to be probably fewer and farther between, because now we have so many ways to make up for those things and get people working and moving. I think it's going to be a really exciting time.
I'm excited to be a part of it for sure. Well, thank you so much, Carrie, for being on the Beyond the Megawatt show today. And we're so grateful to have you as a connector, an educator, and a trailblazer. We just can't appreciate you enough. Thank you for being my industry mentor. I can't appreciate you enough. And Mara, we have to give a shout out to our title sponsor, DCS, Switchgear. And this episode is powered by Mod 42, Modular Data Centers. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Carrie.
Thanks.